Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Tower Park in Fort Thomas, Kentucky, the old original Fort Thomas, literally U.S. Army Post Fort Thomas. And I'm here by building number 1. This is the first one, the General's House. This house was built in 1888 and is now a private residence. This was the General's House, and the first building here as they were starting to build this up into a fort, as it overlooked the Ohio River right here, and off in the distance you can see I-275 as it goes around, and then also the old Coney Island is over. Hello, Jason. Welcome in. Welcome in. Coney Island, which was the original amusement park for here. There was no bridge across the river at the time, and there was an old ferry boat that used to run through there. In June of 1953, Walt Disney, Roy Disney, both visited Coney Island as they were planning, Walt really was planning Disneyland, and they took aspects and things that they saw at Coney Island here, and in turn implemented those, some of that stuff at Disneyland, which is still in use today in Disney World. And that Coney Island is no longer an amusement park here. In 1972, Kings Island opened in place of Coney Island, all because of the flooding issues that they always had. You can see, if you look over down here, and there's a building which is right up in here. The area is Riverbend Music Center, owned by the Cincinnati Pops, Cincinnati Symphony Orchestra, that is. And they're now right in that area. You can see it. You can also see the bridge that goes across there now. But so I'm starting back here because today is the dedication for the General Thomas statue. General George H. Thomas, who the entire fort was named after in 1890. So when the fort was named in 1890, the house back there was 1888. And as the fort developed and they named it after General Thomas, the city or the area around here, which was known as the District of the Highlands, and of course you can tell, well, with all the trees that have grown up and everything, you really can't see the river as well now. But with overlooking the river, this area known as the District of the Highlands, it became Fort Thomas, which is the community where I live. And these are all original officer housing. Like, this is 2 units, and this is a single unit, single home. So these all were fairly recently totally rehabbed, renovated, and sold to individual property owners. The General's House, right back there, the General's House sold for $1,995,000. It's 5 bedrooms, 3.5 baths, and there was a lot of work that went in back here. So this area was actually an active military post, U.S. Army post, from 1890 until 1964. So it was active during the Spanish-American War. It was active during the World War I, World War II, and worked as an induction area. I know you see the playground and the fencing for the ball field over here. That area used to be the parade grounds for everything here when it was a military post. And also there were barracks there. We're making our way around and going to walk up to the historical water tower, which this community is really sort of known for. It's become an iconic symbol of the community right at the entranceway to what was the Army post, and now is known as Tower Park. Sarah Dash, hello, welcome in. Jason, thanks for joining us. Now this home, There had been a fire at the home that was here previously. It burnt down, but they reconstructed and built a new home in the same architectural style as all of these original homes. So there's a tremendous amount of history back in here. This area is now known as Alexander Circle, this residence area. After 1964, the Veterans Administration, VA, from Cincinnati took over this area. And the general's house back there is where the director for the Cincinnati VA would live, as well as other people that worked through the VA would live in these residences around here. So they're getting things ready for 4th of July celebration and everything here in the park. Fireworks group has already got their mortars in place. They're not loaded yet, but the mortars are in place and ready. Just getting a head start on things for Friday. Coming up on Friday morning, we've got the parade, which is historical in nature. It's the oldest parade in Northern Kentucky, as well as being the largest parade in Northern Kentucky for Independence Day. The thing with the parade is it really started as tradition with the military, when this was an Army post, that they would open up the post for the community to come in and take time with the troops, and the military bands would play, and so that's really where the start of the parade began. Here's a little information on Alexander Circle. It shows that on May 8th, 1887, 5 men came riding up on horseback to see this property firsthand. It's an alternative location for the old Newport Barracks down in Newport, Kentucky, which was located right by where the Licking River comes into the Ohio River. And of course, they had a lot of issues with flooding through there. So as they rode to the area, what is now Alexander Circle, which we just walked out of, General Sheridan, still on his horse, stated, this new fort will be the West Point of West Point. Major Samuel Bigstaff and Colonel Melville Cochran agreed that this is a perfect space for the new military post. There is a street here actually named after Colonel Cochran. Now, Sheridan also announced that the fort shall be named for his old friend and companion in arms, General George Henry Thomas. This name would officially be declared on June 20th, 1890, at the dedication ceremony on the parade field, which is now the baseball field. So that's why we are here. Today we're going to make our way up to where they're ready to unveil and dedicate a brand new statue to General Thomas. This is the first time that there's ever been a statue to the general, marking the naming of this military post. The over 80,000 troops joined and were inducted through Fort Thomas during its operating time, and one of which was Brigadier General Paul W. Tibbets. Paul Tibbets, on February 25th, 1937, dropped out of medical school at the University of Cincinnati, came across the river, and enlisted in the Army Air Corps here in Fort Thomas. This is the site where the pilot of the Enola Gay, who dropped the first atomic bomb on Hiroshima, he enlisted right here in Fort Thomas. So the building over here to the side, which is now a community center and always known to and referred to as the mess hall, because that is the original mess hall from where the troops would eat while this was an active base. I'm sorry if I'm missing anybody's messages on chat. Right now the sun's in a really bad position for me and I'm not seeing it, so I apologize. So the community center / mess hall is rented out for weddings, wedding receptions, and a lot of other events which take place, fundraisers and such. It will hold and host 400 people in there. So it's beautiful inside, done very well. They're setting up for the farmers market, which takes place here on Wednesdays. And yes, they carry on with the farmers market through the course of the winter, because they move it inside the mess hall. This area where the amphitheater is, how this goes down a hole, yeah, the amphitheater is not necessarily facing the proper direction, but it's what was available in the area. You always want an amphitheater to face eastbound, so the artists aren't getting hit with the sun coming out of the west for their instruments, instrument protection and everything, and also storm fronts, which normally come out of the west as well. But it's what we had to work with, and this is what we have now for the amphitheater. It does host national acts as well as concerts throughout the year. But the interesting thing is that this area, which wasn't necessarily dug out to be this way, this is just the natural terrain. Yeah, yes, they did some grading to it, but it originally, this was lined up with, or all the way around with bleachers as you went all the way around, and there was a boxing ring right down in the center of it where they would hold inter-battalion, inter-company boxing matches when this was a active military post. So let's make our way on up. We've got about 18 minutes until which time as they will be having the dedication. So in 1970, the city of Fort Thomas purchased a major section of this old property, the old Army post, from the U.S. government, and it is now a community park. Very well done. A new playground was just renovated, coming up here on the left. And I do want to thank everybody for coming in to join me. Let's see, whoop, boom, there we go. So hello, and again, thanks for joining me. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. I do appreciate anybody coming in to join us, and hope you enjoy this little ceremony. And we're covering this really for archival purposes for the community and the city, but also let other people that are from this area just see it, because this is the first ever statue for General Thomas. Flip this back around. Okay, sorry. Here we go. People making their way up for the dedication. The homes over along here, that's Green Street. Those also were officer housing. And hello, Deanna.
How are you?
Very well, and yourself? And those are all single family homes and residences as well now. Good shelter area, playground. As we make our way up. Now up here on the right hand side, you'll start to see the stonework come into play, and that stonework, the structure you see, is the original water tower, which was the 16th building built, 16th structure built here as when it was an operating military post. So, and it was in use until pretty fairly recently. Now, there were no, at the time that was built, there were no other water towers in the area. So they needed a way to get water to the fort, take care of the soldiers and their families who were here. So let's go ahead and make our way over.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
As they're setting up, getting things ready. We are at the corner of Douglas Street and South Fort Thomas Avenue, if you wanted to pull it up on Google Earth or something. And this, of course, was originally the Army post, as I mentioned. It's now known as Tower Park. And there again, the naming comes based on the original water tower here. So, the two cannons that are out here on display, those actually were captured and recovered out of the harbor in Cuba during the Spanish-American War. And those were brought up here and put on display. General Thomas, he was known as the Rock of Chickamauga. General George Henry Thomas, for whom the post was named, born in Virginia in 1816, West Point graduate, in Indian campaigns and Mexican War, in the Civil War, from Mill Springs, Kentucky, January 1862 to Nashville, Tennessee. December 1864, he successfully led federal forces in many principal engagements, rated one of 4 top Union generals, Pacific Division commander at death, 1870. So that gives you just a little history on General Thomas. Established by Congress in 1887, constructed at the cost of $3,500,000 on about 111 acres, jurisdiction of which was ceded to the U.S. by Kentucky legislature in 1888. Post was designated Fort Thomas, 1890. First commander was Colonel Melville Cochran. First garrison, 2 6th infantry companies, later parts of 2, 3, 4, 9, and 10th infantry regiments were here. And now there is still a VA hospital. The Cincinnati VA operates a facility here still to this day. Colonel Harry Clay Egbert. So, a lot of history in the area, and it's all based on this. The local high school is Highlands High School, named after the original name of this area as being the District of the Highlands. So, we're getting ready, and here's where the new bronze statue is. As we're getting ready. Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
All right. So, General Thomas, and actually they just had a bourbon release today. There's a small batch and a single batch bourbon that were 2 different bottles that were just released today. And I've already got 1 of each, but I'm going to duck over into the shade somewhere where I can see, because I've got about 15 minutes. Let's see here. Oh. So we'll head over this way where I can see my chat. Appreciate it, you guys. Okay. Sarah. Awful big hill. I'm sorry, guys, for not actually being able to see the chat as I was walking along. Nah, not a big hill. No problem at all. It's good stuff. So, as they're getting ready here, and we'll take it. Let's see. There. So we got a few people. We had some senior citizens and such that are all starting to sit down, get ready, and I'll go move over and go right out in front. Man. So lot. Street directly across, it's called Tower Place. If you go south, this direction would be south, the way I'm walking, is what is known as the Midway District. And there are a couple of bars and up there in that area that were in business and started back when this was a military post. So, it's good stuff. That as we get ready. So this whole area will be busy. On Friday, the parade, which will start at Highlands High School, which is about a mile and a half north, will follow straight down along here and wind up straight ahead, just down around the corner at the VA hospital area. So the parade route is roughly 2 miles. It's good stuff. Yeah. All original stonework walls. It's interesting to see how they did the walls back then when you see the tops of them. Hard to believe that these are still standing now, built in the 1800s. Yes, this one's new, and they redid it from when they just did this construction down through here, along with the playground area. There's the Cincinnati's Lunken Airfield is just across the river, and a little bit north, just slightly north. And so it's good stuff, and waiting to see how this comes out. And you can easily check the General Thomas Bourbon. You can check that out online as well. How are you doing? You're good. You're fine. So we'll take it. All right, we're just got about another 10 minutes or so. I can walk right up here real quick. The Armory, which is up here, originally the old Armory, which is now a recreation type center, and that the recreation department is housed out of there. The upper floor has 3 full-size basketball courts. Community members will come in and walk through there. It's a good place to walk around 3 basketball courts. In the winter, a lot of pickup basketball games take place in there. The building was used, and the gymnasium area in here was used as the morgue when Beverly Hills Supper Club burnt down in the 1970s. And that is less than a half mile. The location of it was less than a half mile from here, and they needed to be able to bring a lot of people who perished in that fire to a morgue area, and they converted the building into the morgue, or at least at one floor. This is Green Street, where I told you these are all individually owned homes, but they are old original officers' housing. So the larger building right here that you see, that is the Armory. And there again, they've got a couple of rooms down there that could be rented out for various things, birthday parties, whatever. So it works out well. A lot of orange cones that you see up, they've all got no parking on the 4th of July because the parade comes right up through here. And surprised I haven't seen any yet, being Wednesday, but guarantee you tomorrow that a lot of these areas will already be claimed with chairs. Everybody will have their chairs out to claim their spot for the parade, which comes right down the middle of the street here. And the Cincinnati VA, the building straight ahead right here is the VA Medical Center, or their domiciliary They've got one of the leading PTSD treatment programs in the country is based out of here as well, through the Cincinnati VA. And a couple of good bars, restaurants, net right down through this area, which is the Midway District. There's tennis courts up here now and basketball courts all outside. A lot of area there. Hello everybody and welcome in. Thanks for joining me. Again, we're here for the dedication ceremonies of the statue to General George H. Thomas, which the fort in our community was named after. The fort first, and then the community took the name shortly after, going back, dating back to 1890. So, make our way right back up here real quick to where the statue is, and we're getting ready to start. Easy walking area in that green street, and they refer to that as Military Commons. It is a National Historic Community established in 1894. So that gives you an idea as to how old these homes actually are. And they are beautiful inside. The detail to the woodwork, the craftsmanship, and everything that they went through and had is something else. So, everybody, again, if you haven't subscribed, please hit that subscribe, hit that like button, share it out. Let's see if we can't get some more people watching. Great community to grow up in. My mother grew up here, and then my parents built a house here shortly after they were married, and myself and my wife purchased the house from my parents in 2000. So we've raised Caitlin and Kelsey and our family in the house that I grew up in. So I know a lot about the community, and especially our neighborhood, because we were the first house on the street. I was just a year old when we moved into that house. I'm being the oldest of 3 children. So let's go ahead and come up over here. As we get ready, and I do apologize, I cannot see the chat for the life of me.
How's it going? You doing good? How are you? Dude, you got it live yet?
Oh, I'm live. I'm live.
I'll watch it, bring it in.
Yeah. How you doing? Were you watching? Yeah.
No, but I was watching you in Disney cruise or somewhere.
Oh,
A while back.
Yep. Good stuff. How you doing, ladies?
And I was watching you somewhere else. You were live.
No, I'm live. I started back in the back and worked my way up here to the front. So it's good stuff.
You watched it when they brought it in, big train.
Right.
It's cool.
Yeah. Did you get a bottle of the bourbon?
Yeah. But then you got to watch it.
Oh no, better not. Oh my goodness, Rondell. So I even see our old city manager here. Current city manager, the old city manager. Fun stuff. Let's see, guys. Okay, we should be getting ready here very shortly. Hopefully this doesn't run like most governmental situations where they run late, but I don't think it will. Let's see. Mayor's here. Our mayor right here, who actually was responsible. He's one of a couple of people who were responsible for bringing the first Hofbrauhaus outside of Munich, Germany, to the area. It's down in Newport, Kentucky, which is very close. I mentioned the Newport Barracks earlier, which is where this Army post, when it became Fort Thomas, was replacing the Newport Barracks. So with that, but down in Newport, Kentucky, you've got the first Hofbrauhaus, which is located outside of Munich, Germany. And our mayor right here, Eric, who's responsible for, he's the one responsible for bringing Hofbrau to northern Kentucky, Cincinnati. Yeah. So, fun stuff. This has been a long time coming. They started working on this, and then we're trying to find a place to put it. Tower stands iconic, absolutely iconic for this community, and is a major representation of it, such as they redid the city logo, and that's where you see straight across where it says Tower Park, and it's good that the city logo now has the tower on it. So come on through, you're fine. So, now getting a few people here. So we'll see what they have to do. And everybody, thank you again for joining me. Then we've got some incredible, what I hope are going to be incredible streams coming up in October. This being the 250th, starting the 250th anniversary of the United States, where we've got a event coming into town, into the Cincinnati and northern Kentucky area, called America's River Roots. Go look on Google, America's River Roots Festival. There's going to be 9 river boats here coming in from across the country. They will be running cruises, dinner cruises, lunch cruises, sightseeing cruises, late night cruises, various things that for a long weekend. They're getting ready next week to release their headlining artists. There's going to be a whole bunch of stages set up on both sides of the river. So we'll take it from there. And actually, I have on October 10th, I have a ticket for the late night cruise on board the Natchez, Natchez, which is coming up out of New Orleans. It's going to be Dixieland jazz and fun New Orleans style entertainment on the Ohio River on board the Natchez. And that stream, the cruise is from 11 at night till 1 a.m. So late night fun time, and we're going to get out there and do that and have a good time with that. And then 2 days later, on October 12th, I've got tickets to be on board the Belle of Louisville for the steamboat race. It's the Belle of Louisville against the Natchez. So I'm going on Natchez first, and then the Belle of Louisville will be live streaming the great steamboat race from the decks of the Belle of Louisville on the 12th of October. So, and both of those are already set up. Those streams are set up for Friday. I'm not certain where I'm going to be yet, if I'm going to be up here or if I'm going to a different community for their event where I've done a lot of stuff. I'm going up and talk with them tomorrow. If I am in the other location, I will be live streaming Billy F. Gibbons. Billy Gibbons, lead singer, guitar player from ZZ Top. He's going to be in concert. Billy F. Gibbons and the BFGs. So, yeah, I've got the stream set up. It's not showing yet because I'm waiting to verify that that's actually where I will be, and I'll know that one tomorrow. So watch for that to come out tomorrow, along with one of the largest fireworks in the entire area, all done by Arthur Rossi Pyrotechnics, and that's for Independence Day, fireworks. So it looks like we are about ready to get going here. This is our mayor, Eric Hawes. He's starting right on time.
Hello, everybody. It's 2 o'clock and time for us to start this process.
All right.
Everyone, what a great day. What a great day in Fort Thomas. Y'all have to know this project has been in the works since Matt Langford proposed his idea for this statue of General George H. Thomas in 2006. He quietly closed his eyes and told the story of Mr. Thomas's life from childhood through his military career, all the way to the point when the city of Fort Thomas was named for this hero. It was clear that Matt knew George Thomas. He identified with the young George who rebelled against the norms of his time and taught the young slaves in his family how to read. He recognized the strength of the young men who left his Confederate family to fight for the Union. Matt saw the heart of the soldier who gave his soldiers an acorn in honor of their bravery for standing strong like an oak tree. Matt spent an hour recounting the entire story of General Thomas's life from start to finish. By the time he was done, we knew he was the sculptor for Fort Thomas. Former City Administrator Don Martin gave permission for the endeavor to begin. A committee was formed during the sesquicentennial in 2017. Bob Heil and his wife Mary Beth, Chris Manning and his wife Paula, and Debbie Buckley began the process of raising funds. The committee spoke to clubs and schools and individuals all over the community. They organized fundraisers and events. All 3 elementary schools rose to the occasion. The Amazing Race, the White on White Dinner, the Green Street Home Tour, the Garden Club, entry fees for other events at the Sesquicentennial, a second White on White Dinner at Bob and Mary's house, joined together to bring this statue here. A special bourbon was even made to commemorate the Sesquicentennial, and Debs gave a portion of the proceeds of each bottle towards the statue. Well, COVID slowed our process, but finally we are here today. During Ron Dill's tenure as city administrator, 3 designs were presented, and this area was chosen as the most prominent place for our namesake to stand. And this happened during the building of the park here. Matt Kramer was introduced to Matt Langford when he became the new city administrator. The 2 quickly started a plan to finish the project with the city's financial support approved by City Council. This included, as I said, installing this plaza along with the construction of the new playground. Today we celebrate not only this beautiful statue, but also the fulfillment of another long-term vision for our great city. So please welcome Matt Langford.
There, you can take that.
Oh, this is easy. Okay, there you go. All right, thank you. Testing. I have to, if I could raise this a little bit, there we go. I'd like to start with my thanks to the many people involved, and I know this is going to be a little bit repetitive to what you're going to hear today, but thanks is a big part of this project, or this process, I should say. Particularly, thank you, Mayor Hawes, for the introduction and the support along the way. I thank particularly my wife, Allison. She's my wife, creative partner, and my loving helpmate, who has improved every piece of sculpture that I've ever developed is better because of her input. We are a team. I thank Chris Manning of Human Nature, landscape architect, responsible for this plaza, this development. The consideration of the best viewpoint, best location, best materials. It's just a wonderful compliment to what I hope will be accepted as a strong piece. And so his help has been involved since very early on.
Debbie Buckley, also there from the beginning, Renaissance director at one time here in Fort Thomas, and she actually was the very first person I made contact with regard to this statue. So her involvement, crucial and appreciated. Bob Heil there from very early on, very instrumental in fundraising, in storage of molds, in just about any technical side of things. He was there to give either approval or input, and I think he could be considered a spear point of this project, and so I'm thankful for that. Yes, it's too late to ask people to raise their hands and be recognized, but you know where you are. Let's see, Jason Reinhold, if he's here, did this very impressive stone base, and he really did it justice. That is a labor of love. It was not an easy undertaking, and the result is absolutely fitting for what I'm trying to do as far as a format for this statue. Let's see, and I would like to thank all donors who put in the resources to see that this happened. These projects run off of cash flow, and I'm not a mercenary. I just want to see things happen, and unfortunately, or fortunately, money is part of that process. So to all of those listed on the plaque, I am very grateful for your support, and particularly a certain Mrs. Hingelbrock of the Hingelbrock and the Hingelbrock family, who I understand was our project's largest donor, and will have a good bit of ownership of this piece along with the community. Okay, thanks being what they are. A little backstory. They said I had 90 minutes to fill. Sorry, I'm out.
We won't be here.
Just kidding. Okay. This is a story. 73 years ago, a young English immigrant named Roger Langford, who was living on Garrison Street, had a first date with a young woman from Covington, Kentucky, named Rebia Cruey, which included walking around the reservoir here in Fort Thomas 73 years ago. Following courtship, marriage, and 10 years, I stand here as a result. I like to say my father was from London, England, and my mother was from London, Kentucky. So that's my connection to Fort Thomas. I do have a little, I haven't lived here, but early on, after Dad came over from England, they did spend some time renting a place on Garrison. My father then went into the service during the Korean era, and the rest is family history. Now, my role here is not to steal the thunder of the historian, Miss Beinecke. It is to give the backstory on the statue itself. What is the thinking? What is the symbology? What was my approach? I'm not going to go too deep water, but understand that there's more than meets the eye, and I'll give you a few clues. If I could read this. Now, the mayor already mentioned that I basically heard about this possibility of a statue in Fort Thomas, and I did beat a path to Debbie Buckley's door and made my pitch. Part of what I communicated is that that's exactly what I want to do with what I have the capacity to do, is put a face on history. To take neglected figures of history, who people know their name, Fort Thomas, Mary Ingalls Highway. We know these things, but the kids, maybe even ourselves, are a little confused about exactly what is the backstory on the namesake. And absolutely, General Thomas, he's probably the greatest example of such a figure, in my opinion, with regard to Civil War study. it's only the diehards that know who he was. And I see him as such a major player in the war that it's my not only pleasure, but it's hard to put into words. It comes down to it's my opportunity to portray him, to bring him out of the shadows, to give him the light of day that he didn't have in his day, because he died shortly after the war. He didn't have a PR campaign. He didn't write memoirs. He didn't run for president. He did his job. He did it well, and he was a master of war. Now, one second here. Good. He was loved by his troops, and on an exceptional level. And he had great regard for them too. There was an affinity between them. Not unusual in war to bond with your commanding officer, but General Thomas had a true paternal relationship with those in his charge, to the point where they called him Pap Thomas. He has other nicknames that'll be covered in the historical side of things, but I like that idea of Pap Thomas and his boys. Now, as far as approaching the statue itself, I thought that a commanding man, and he is a commanding man, in role and in presence, should have a commanding statue. Not a brand X. This thing should have some internal power that conveys the grit, the intellect, and the fierce focus of the man. And that's what I sought to portray. That's part of the picture. It is a fairly straightforward figure, but there is symbology involved in it. And the main aspect of symbology, which I will let you in on, involves his extended hand coming out and resting like a cane on the pommel of a standard issue cavalry sword and scabbard. It's not the fancy general's ceremonial sword. This is the rank and file. Now, he commanded an army, and in that army was cavalry, artillery, infantry, but he had an affinity for the cavalry, having served earlier in his career. And I wanted to focus on that. So his outfit has cavalry influences with spurs and so on. But the primary aspect is the metaphorical side of that sword representing the infantry, supporting him under his guiding hand. That is metaphorically what I'm trying to get across. He's the leader, but he depends on the support of those underneath him. The metaphor being that sword going to the ground, rooted, stable, under his hand. Now, another element is his belt plate. A little side story here, but I was going to drive the point further home by giving him an infantry belt plate that said U.S., you know, he fought for the North. And that was where I was going, but I have another artist friend that I had been talking it over with, and he says, he's quite a bit older than me, and he kind of says dryly, well, he was a general, wasn't he? So, point being, he ended up with a very fine general's belt plate. You know, we've got the sword covering the infantry. The general should be dressed as a general. Carries a Stetson hat. The man had some style. Beyond that, you're welcome to view it and see whether or not my description matches my effort. My phone is locking up on me. Can you believe that? Oh, here it is. Hold on one second. Yay, back in business. Okay, he was, now, as a man, history will reflect that he was a reflective man. He deliberated, but he was effective. Okay. He was, in my opinion, a prime example of what is meant by the very misunderstood term meekness. We think of meekness as being weakness. The man was in no way weak. Meekness is great strength held in check and focused. And when released or used, it's for the good of others, and it is effective. Meekness is not weakness. The man was meek. He was very strong, but he was governed by discipline. And that gave him the focus and the clarity to be extremely effective on the battlefield. So, to finish, I would say, an even greater example of meekness, you can guess, would be the Lord Jesus Christ, who under his guiding hand, General Thomas served. I hope that this monument will be viewed as having done justice to a man who gave his all for the principles, the just principles, which he himself lived by. Well, thank you. And I would introduce Miss Beinecke, Deanna Beinecke, Director of the Fort Thomas Military and Community Historical Museum and author of From Peach Orchard to Park. We will go up after the event. I will remember you, sir.
I am much shorter than he. And I was told 5 minutes, not 90. So I have to compress 64 years of a life into 5 minutes. When Colonel Cochran arrived in his new command on August 22nd, 1890, this new military installation did not have a name. It was listed as the New Post near Newport, Kentucky. The Army and Navy Journal, a weekly newspaper which published official reports, lists of promotions, and such other news, made note in the September 6th issue that the 6th Infantry had begun arriving at its new home in Fort Crook, Kentucky. Just 1 week later, the newspaper announced that the regimental band had arrived at its new home in Fort Thomas, Kentucky, in the Highlands of Kentucky near Newport. Apparently, General Sheridan, who had recommended the site here, also recommended the name change to honor his former teacher at West Point, General George Henry Thomas. I'm grateful for that name change, especially that I know just how principled a man General Thomas was. George Thomas was born in Virginia in July of 1860. His father died when George was 12, and George's uncle took over the handling of the family farm. George was studying law when the opportunity arose to attend the United States Military Academy at West Point. As a 20-year-old, he was the oldest first-year student there. He soon acquired the nickname Old Tom. After graduation, he served in 2 wars before receiving an appointment to teach both cavalry and artillery tactics at West Point. One of his students was Philip Sheridan. When shots were fired at Fort Sumter to begin the Civil War, Thomas made the decision to remain with the Union Army. It was probably the most difficult decision of his life, but his wife said, whichever way he turned the matter over in his mind, his oath of allegiance to the government always came uppermost. His sisters turned his picture to the wall in his former Virginia home and refused to attend his funeral, stating that as far as they were concerned, their brother died in 1861. We know General Thomas most frequently as the Rock of Chickamauga because of his refusal to back down in the face of repeated enemy assaults. And we know that he was the most successful general in the Union Army, suffering the fewest casualties of any commander and never losing a battle. From his earliest days in command, even straight out of West Point, he was described as being calm and collected. His first captain wrote in his evaluation of Thomas, "I never knew him to be late or in a hurry. All his movements were deliberate. His self-possession was supreme, and he received and gave orders with equal serenity." This deliberation and self-possession tended to give some of his more aggressive superiors fits, but they served him well in battle, and he had the respect of those who served under him. Medal of Honor recipient Henry Van Ness Boynton, who fought under him in 1863, wrote that Thomas looked upon the lives of his soldiers as a sacred trust, not to be carelessly imperiled. Whenever he moved to battle, it was certain that everything had been done that prudence, deliberation, thought, and cool judgment could do under surrounding circumstances to ensure success commensurate with the cost of the lives of men. And so it came to pass that when the war ended, it could truthfully be written of Thomas that he never lost a movement or a battle. Following the Civil War, General George Henry Thomas served as commander of the Military Division of Tennessee and finished his career as commander of the Department of the Pacific, where he died in San Francisco in March 1870 as the result of a stroke. Historians are beginning to recognize that General Thomas deserves more respect for his role during the Civil War than he has received. In an article in Smithsonian Magazine in 2007, John Bowers, author of the book Chickamauga and Chattanooga, writes that Thomas was never the life of the party. He neither rose from poverty nor went off the deep end through drink or craziness. Could Thomas be a little too boring to fit into the mythology of comfortably in the American? Let me say that again. Could Thomas be a little too boring to fit comfortably into American mythology? Thomas seems to have always maddeningly done the right thing, and we are very grateful for that. Thank you.
That was Deanna Beinecke, and she is one who staffs. She staffs the Fort Thomas Military and Community Museum, which is here on the grounds. Hello, D-Lo. Thanks for coming in, everybody. Yeah. Here's the fort that we've been waiting for. So, roughly 25 minutes of ceremony so far. Not bad. Wait, as you get into it.
That is so smart.
Okay. Need to make sure everything's clear. There we go, General George Henry Thomas, who namesake
Thank you, everybody. Is this not
from
awesome
Fort
or
Thomas,
what?
the historical military post here, and
Thank
our
you,
community.
everybody who was involved in this. Thank you, everybody who donated. Thank you all for showing up today. We have some refreshments around here, some cold water, and lemonade and iced tea. So please hang around and check out the statue and enjoy each other's company. Thank you all very much.
All right, there we go. Voila. All right, everybody. Hey, yeah, I know I got a little notice on there that it was overheating a little bit. The phone was. Showed device overheating. Let's see. Let's come around and see. Okay. So, shows the artist. The Stetson, as they mentioned, so white. So, as he mentioned, how the sword coming down and the general's belt buckle. Hard to see, folks. There we go. Go on. Good stuff. So, thank you all for joining me for this dedication of the statue to General George Henry Thomas. And with that, folks, let me get to where I can read my chat a little bit. There, let's step out. Excuse me. Let's go over here. Hope that maybe in the shade I can pull up chat and see it. I want to thank everybody for joining me. Here again, more of the original homes. That you can actually see a star on the side of them, and there's rods. There's rods that actually go through those homes. When you see a star like that, there's a rod that goes through, and those hold the walls together. So, Jason Delo, thanks very much for joining me. Delo, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt. I barely saw your message asking who the lady was. As I mentioned, that's Deanna Beinecke. She takes care of the Fort Thomas Military and Community Museum here. So let's flip this around for you guys. There we go. And again, I got 4 people here now. I see. Thank you all very much for joining me. Glad that you were able to come in. Sarah Dash, Delo, Jason. Thanks very much. I hope that you've enjoyed a little view and to see what our community here in Fort Thomas is like. Highly recommend, if you're coming to the Cincinnati area, to come over and check out this park and just take a walk around, see the areas, witness these old homes that go back to the late 1800s, and take the opportunity to go into the Military and Community Museum here, see stuff. There's a lot of history in this area, and truly enjoy it. Thank you all very much for being here. And again, hey, remember, coming up in October, I've got some other streams coming up. Look for the 4th of July. We'll see which one I'm going to cover, if I'll be here in Fort Thomas or if I'll be in Blue Ash, Ohio, for Billy F. Gibbons and the BFGs. But as of right now, it's on delay until I find out tomorrow what I'm going to be able to do. So thank you, everybody, and be watching for more streams coming up from Kings Island, because there again, they've got their Grand Carnival getting ready to start up here in a week and a half. So Grand Carnival, we'll get up there and cover the parades and all the festivities of Grand Carnival at Kings Island. So everybody have a great afternoon. Thank you all very much for joining me, and I'm going to flip this around to go back over and catch the Gerald Thomas one more time here. So thank you all very much, and my mods and anybody else who joined in. If you appreciate history, I hope you liked getting a chance to see a lot of this area.
Oh, excuse me.
Okay. There we go. Walk down this way just a little bit so I can see what I'm doing. Sorry, folks. The sun is blocking everything on me today. Great playground here too for the kids. Good bathrooms right over here. You can pack a picnic lunch, come up. There's some tables out here that are in sun, but then there's a pavilion area right over there as well. So, there we go. Thank you all very much. Take care and have a great day. We'll see you.